Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Life finds a way, everybody.
We were like, are we still going? No, we're not.
No, I don't even know if the song even continues after that in the movie. Because this is our Theros Beyond Death. Get it? Set review. We have done the legendary creatures. We have done many cards, and we've talked about many cards, but there are still plenty left because there are many, many, many interesting things here in Theros. It is an Enchantment Matters set. Boy, oh boy, we have a lot of stuff in front of us, so let's just get straight into it, shall we, Josh?
Well, before we do, we got to talk about our awesome sponsors. Remember, as always, cardkingdom.com/commandzone. Right now, you can be pre-ordering your Theros Beyond Death booster boxes, bundles, singles. There's a lot of really, really powerful cards in this set. This set, if you've been online seeing the chatter, like it's one of the more powerful sets to come around in a long time. A lot of eye-opening cards that we're going to talk about today that we already talked about last episode. You want to get your hands on that stuff, cardkingdom.com/commandzone.
And of course, UltraPro is our other sponsor for the show, and they, of course, make awesome playmat sleeves, deck boxes, and more for every single set, but notably for sets that have great art. It means that you don't want to miss out on buying a playmat. Or, actually, when every set comes out, I usually get around one playmat. And it's just, I like collecting them. They're almost like little pieces of art. I can change out my mouse pad as well every now and then, and that keeps the workflow fresh. So if you're at cardkingdom.com/commandzone at a big box retailer or your local game store, make sure to check out UltraPro products. Buy some and you support the show.
Yeah, especially if you're going to build a new deck. It's really cool to theme out all your stuff with the deck.
Or even just one part.
Yeah.
Right?
But you can get the sleeves that are at least maybe themed towards it or whatever. That's always cool too.
Yeah.
And the final way to support all of our content is directly if you go to patreon.com/commandzone. In fact, we shout out one lucky patron every single episode. And this episode is dedicated to Ray Harsono.
Harsano?
Ray. You rock. All right, let's get right into it because we have a lot to talk about. There's a bunch of cards in front of us, and there's going to be a bunch. So, Theros Beyond Death set review. We did the legendary creatures last week on last week's episode, so this episode is dedicated to all the cards that are going to go in your 99. We're not really going to talk about the commanders. If you're interested in that, check out last week's episode. All right, let's start out as we always do with the new mechanics or returning mechanics. Just all the mechanics.
Yep. The first major mechanic is a brand new one. It's called Escape, and it fits along the theme of what Theros is all about, which is escaping the underworld. And in this case, it means escape your graveyard. So if a card has Escape on it, it usually has a mana cost that's associated with it, and then a exile cost of a number of cards from your graveyard, and it allows you to recast the card at the speed that you're legally allowed to do so. So sorceries at sorcery speed, all that stuff, and you can basically recast it onto the outfield. Usually the escape clause is cheaper than, actually, you know what? It varies.
It varies, yeah. Sometimes it's more expensive, sometimes it's cheaper.
And the number of cards you have to exile is also very different every time.
Yeah, so for example, it'll say 4 and a blue, exile 5 cards, and that's your escape cost, which means you have to pay 4 and a blue and exile 5 cards from your graveyard.
Yeah, other cards.
And then you're casting it from your graveyard, but you are casting it, so it still counts as casting a creature or whatever it is.
Enter the battlefield abilities and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting mechanic. It's a new kind of recursion mechanic. It's got some similarities to things we've seen in the past, like flashback and things like that, but it's not exactly the same, as we'll get into. Another returning mechanic, or our first returning mechanic, is Constellation, which is just a mechanic that basically cares about when enchantments enter the battlefield under your control.
Yeah, we're not going to see too much of it in our set review today, but there are a lot more enchantment creatures in this set, so if that's something that you have decks built around in the past, just something to keep an eye out for. Devotion is another returning mechanic, and that means it cares about how many pips of a color you have on the battlefield. So if you have an enchantment that's 2 blue, you have 2 Devotion, 2 blue, if that's the only permanent with blue pips on the battlefield under your control. Some stuff cares about, the gods care about in terms of turning into creatures, and other things care about adding mana and all that stuff.
You'll gain life equal to your devotion to whatever, or maybe you'll do damage.
You'll lose life.
Yeah. Sagas are back. This is not exactly a mechanic, but it's a sort of pseudo card type. They're enchantments. Sagas are enchantments They're also historic cards, just to keep in mind. But what they do is when you play the Saga, you add a lore counter to it, and they have like chapters on them. So they'll say 1, 2, 3, and at each chapter they will do something. And so when you play it, you put the lore counter on, and it'll do that first thing. And then after your draw step, you'll add a lore counter every turn. And then once you've gone through all the chapters, you're on the last chapter, you place it, you get that effect, and then you sacrifice the Saga.
Yep, so it's basically telling the story of something. They're really interesting cards from a story and sort of Vorthos perspective, but also can be abused, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Finally, this is an Enchantments Matter set. Like we said before, they're enchantment creatures, and there are enchantments. There are legendary enchantments that are indestructible. There are lots of things running around this set, so if your deck cares about enchantments, enchantment auras, and all that stuff, this is the set and the world for you.
Yeah, this is your time.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the new Planeswalkers. We usually start out there. There are 3 in this set.
Yes.
2 returning and 1 new, right?
Yeah, that's right. The first off, I mean, the characters are returning.
Correct.
And they also all have these cool new borderless alternate arts as well. And they also, there's a lot of new sort of alternate extended frames and all that stuff.
Let's not speculate about how you get the different arts, because I still don't know.
I still don't know either.
There are collector's boosters, there are theme boosters, there are regular boosters.
There's also cardkingdom.com/commandzone.
Yeah,
so you don't have to worry or think about any of it.
You just order it how you want it. Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, first off, we have Return of Ashiok. It's Ashiok Nightmare Muse, 3 blue and a black for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. And its +1 is create a 2/3 blue and black nightmare creature token with whenever this creature attacks or blocks, each opponent exiles the top 2 cards of their library. The -3, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then that player exiles a card from their hand. In the -7, you may cast up to 3 face-up cards your opponents own from exile without paying their mana cost. So the idea is the -3 can give you things to cast with the -7. The +1 is just it's instead of milling, it's actually exiling cards off of their library.
And that then you can maybe be cast for free with the ultimate ability.
Which won't happen. But
the ultimate ability actually doesn't care, I don't think, if any of Ashiok's abilities or the creatures that it made are the exiled cards. If things are exiled in other ways, you
like escaping.
Yeah, so you could still cast it. Ashiok's a tough card to sort of crack as far as think of what you would want to do. I think like maybe the Eldrazi processors, you can get an effect by having your opponent's cards in exile, moving them to the graveyard, and then something happens, but none of the processors are that great.
Yeah, I think the main thing that Ashiok is good for is decks that care about trying to mill people out or get rid of things in libraries, and it just is a card for 5 mana that says you can either make a creature that will help you do it, or you can also return a non-land permanent and also somewhat disrupt someone. So it's kind of like a multi-use Planeswalker card. It doesn't really... I'm not terribly impressed by it, but I think certain players and types of mill players might think it's an interesting addition, something that might be, a more flexible slot than something else they had in there before.
I mean, 5 mana, make it 2/3 every turn, not the worst. I mean, every turn I say it's probably going to be dead after a couple turns, but whatever. It seems all right. Okay, the next Planeswalker is Calix, Destiny's Hand. This is a new character. 2, a green and a white for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. Has a +1. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an enchantment card from among them and put that card into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Then -3, exile target creature or enchantment you don't control until target enchantment you control leaves the battlefield. So you need your own enchantment on the board, and then you exile somebody else's either enchantment or creature, and then you target one of your enchantments, and that kind of becomes like an O-ring or a Banishing Light.
Yeah, when that goes away, then they get their thing back. That is one of the most bizarre lines of text I think I've ever read.
Yeah, but it is actually pretty good because it's versatile. It's creature enchantment. So it has the ability to get a couple of different kinds of things, I guess, but it's conditional, right? If you don't have an enchantment on the battlefield, you can't even activate the -3 on Calix, right?
Yep. It says right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says exile target creature or enchantment you don't control until target enchantment you control leaves the battlefield. Yep. So you need targets for both.
Yeah, if it said up to 1, then you'd be fine. But yeah, you have to have your own enchantment.
The -7, the ultimate ability, is a good one. Return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Okay, so maybe you have a doubling season in there.
Oh, and just immediately boom.
Ultimate, yeah. Typically the doubling season is the thing you're going to want to get back from the graveyard to the battlefield, but sure. For that ultimate, it could be something in a superbly Enchantment Matters deck. with doubling season.
But you do have to do some work, right? Because you got to have enchantments in there. Even just doubling season, then this won't necessarily. Some games, nothing's in your graveyard yet.
Yeah,
and
you'd much rather play any of the doubling season Planeswalkers. It just wins you the game on the spot.
One thing I will say for Calyx is probably comes in +1s, goes to 5, and draws you a card and replaces itself. And then, if nobody can get at it right away, then you might be able to exile 1 or 2 things.
The only problem is that it's only enchantments. Yeah. Typically, they say enchantment or land have a little bit more flexibility, but it's only enchantments. So if you have a Tuvasa deck, Estrid, Krond of the Dawnclad, go nuts. But not too nuts.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we have perhaps the most important character that's coming back that everyone's stoked about. Elspeth.
Definitely the most important character that's coming back. Yeah. For the story.
Yeah.
The whole story is built around her.
She'll never be Sun's champion again, power level wise. But in this case, it's Elspeth, Sun's nemesis.
Right.
2 white for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. -1, up to 2 target creatures you control each get +2/+1 until end of turn. -2. Create 2 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens. Now that's feeling more like Elspeth. And the -3, you gain 5 life. However, this is the first ever planeswalker to feature another ability that is a mechanic. It has escape. Elspeth can escape for 4 white and exiling 4 other cards from your graveyard.
So you play it for, you notice Elspeth does not have a plus ability.
Yes, it's only minus.
Can never go up. So you're always, every time you use her, she's getting closer to dying again, I guess. And then, but you can purposely do that so that you can escape her back out and do it again.
Notably, she has a -1, -2, and -3. Do you remember the Dominaria Planeswalkers? It would start at 5, but only have a -2, so it'd get down to 1. And
or the War of the Spark.
War of the Spark, sorry. And it was like, oh, you don't actually want to kill it.
Right.
Because you don't want it to come back some way, so we just leave it at 1. In this case, Elspeth, because she has a -1, will always find a way to knock herself out. Yeah. And then you can escape it again for 6 mana, and then keep creating tokens, gaining life, or giving creatures +2/+1.
The problem, I think, here is that the abilities are pretty mediocre. The make tokens one is the good one.
Yeah.
But Sun's Champion is so great because all the abilities are awesome.
Yeah, +1, make 3 1/1s. It's a plus.
Yeah.
And then you have a board wipe?
You have a board wipe on the thing. So I just can't... it'll probably be okay. Makes a couple tokens, maybe 6 around a couple turns, makes 4 tokens. At some point, maybe you escape it later, but 6 mana for that is not the greatest.
Yeah, 4 mana at its best, I think you're creating 2 1/1s.
Yeah, you might get 4.
It's not great. You might get 4.
Even 4 mana for 4 1/1s is not like, whoa, my gosh, broken, right? That's just like, okay.
I mean, you do often get to, I would assume, use her ability, get rid of her, and breed player in the same turn and use it again. So,
but do you want to pay 6 mana?
Nope.
Yeah, so not that great. This is a very fair Elspeth, I'd say.
Yeah, but it's cool. We've never seen that before, like a mechanic on a card like that.
Yeah, it's cool that they're experimenting with stuff. Okay, that's all the new Planeswalkers. There's a couple of cycles in this set. The first one we're going to talk about is the Saga cycle. Not so much because they're very powerful, but they're cool.
Yeah,
I like this cycle a lot.
Yeah, they're really cool. They tell the story of basically, a lot of the gods and all the cards in here are analogs and sort of directly related to actual Greek myths and stories. Do you want to talk about cards that are good with sagas before we get into it?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Okay, let's talk about some general cards that are just good with sagas, because we got 10 more sagas, I think, this set.
Yeah.
And so we're up to about 29 sagas total now. So it might be possible. We might be getting close to being able to build a saga deck.
Saga Tribal.
In EDH, which I think would be cool.
Yeah. A lot of stories to be told there.
Yeah.
Way too many triggers on your draw step. People will not like you for that if you can't handle it. But there are a lot of cards that play well with sagas because these are adding generic counters. So we have Chisei, Heart of Oceans, which is a card that people are really excited about now because there's a couple more mono blue sagas. It's a 4/4 flyer for 4 mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Chisei unless you remove a counter from a permanent you control. So again, sagas trigger on the draw step. So you can just repeat the same step over and over again on a certain saga. By upkeep, take it off. It goes back to 1 or to 2 or to wherever you want it to be.
Yep, it's just like +1ing your Planeswalker every turn, kind of.
Yeah.
Power Conduit's another one. It's 2 mana for an artifact. You can tap it to remove a counter from a permanent you control, and then choose one. Put a charge counter on target artifact, or put a 1/1 counter on target creature.
More cards actually care about charge counters.
Well, this is good, too, because you're turning them into +1 counters, which are at least worth something.
Or Lux Cannon gets charged up by charge counters,
Scary.
Hex Parasite, it's a 1 mana creature that's X, and then Phyrexian, so you can remove up to X counters from target permanent. So this is a lot more flexible. You can remove 2 counters from your one that has 2 on it to reset all the way back to none.
Thrall Parasite, similar things, removing counters from targets.
Yeah, same with Ferropede.
Ferropede.
It's kind of like on combat damage.
Yep,
but
does it on combat damage but can't be blocked.
yeah, I mean, if you have a lot of other players with permanents, counters on permanents, that's kind of nice because these don't really care about your
somebody else's planeswalkers.
Yeah.
Clock spinning is sort of meant to do suspend counters, but it can choose a counter on target permanent and remove it with buyback. There's Fury Charm, similar thing. Blinking the sagas will also reset them, so Aminatu can work decently with sagas.
Her -1 does that. You have Brago, King Eternal. You have cards like Copy Enchantment or Mirror Maid from the new set.
Yep, Mirage Mirror would actually be decent in your upkeep. You turn it into the saga.
Oh yeah.
Goes over, gets the counter. It will keep the lore counter over the time, so you can't do that too much, or you'll have to sacrifice it.
Yeah, you could change it into 1 for 1 turn and another one for the second one. You can like combine your sagas.
Oh, that's really interesting.
All right,
I want to skip to 2. The saga deck might be beginning to be real. You can also bounce the sagas back to your hand. So there's a new card from Theros called Shimmerwing Chimera. It's 3 and a blue for a 3/2 with flyer. It's an enchantment creature. But it says at the beginning of your upkeep, return up to 1 other target enchantment you control to its owner's hand. So once it goes to 2, if you don't want it to go to 3 on the saga and then sack it. Although I'm saying 3 because they used to go to 3. Some of these go to 4 now. But if you don't want it to go to the 11, final chapter and then sacrifice, then you can bounce it back to your hand and replay it to sort of get that value train going again.
Cool.
There's a couple other things too. You want to cast sagas at instant speed on your end step because then they'll get the counter and then you'll immediately draw your card on your next turn, go to 2 right away.
2, yeah.
Proliferate also can be really good with sagas. So a lot of ways to abuse sagas. I'm kind of excited I hope that we get one. I think if we get one more set with a decent amount of sagas, then it'll be a real deck. Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to try and build around it because it needs to be a very flexible strategy.
Okay, let's go through this saga cycle just because it's fun to talk about Greek mythology. So this first one is called the Acroan War. It's 3 in a red. It has 3 chapters. Gain control of target creature for as long as the Acroan War remains on the battlefield. That's the first chapter. Chapter 2, until your next turn, creatures your opponents control attack each turn if able. So all your opponents have to attack. Chapter 3, each tapped creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. Insidious, because you make them attack and then they're all going to hit themselves.
Yeah, so it's kind of like we went to war, but it was a bad idea.
This is basically the Trojan War. This harkens back to, that Brad Pitt movie.
Yeah, the first time the Trojan War was ever recorded in modern history, or just history in general, was the Brad Pitt did it.
Yep. So actually, this is an interesting card, though. I did want to talk about a little bit because that first chapter, gain control of target creature for as long as the Acroan War remains on the battlefield.
Yeah.
We're not used to red control magic in creatures for more than until your end step. This is 2 or 3 turns if you just don't do anything. And then if you got some shenanigans going on like power conduit and stuff, you potentially just keep those creatures forever. And again, if you can remove the counter so you're always on going to 1 every time.
Oh, that's right. You're just going to keep
steal a creature, steal another creature, steal another creature. If you're proliferating and doing crazy stuff.
All of a sudden, the Acroan War, the red saga, becomes the single best saga that's ever been printed because of the shenanigans.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know if it's right now to build around sagas in that way, but there are things you can do with this card that I think is interesting.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have the Binding of the Titans. 1 in the green for the sort of the story of the Titans being sort of banished
to Tartarus.
Yes. The first stage, saga, lore, part, whatever. I don't even.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. Each player puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. Chapter 2. Exile up to 2 target cards from graveyards. For each creature card exiled this way, you gain 1 life.
The Titans got cast down and then imprisoned.
Chapter 3, return target creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand.
Spoiler alert, the Titans break free and,
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It'll mill everyone, and then you can exile some cards, not necessarily ones that you milled, and then you return some stuff, creature or land, and for 2 mana, it's an uncommon. It's not terribly impressive, but it does have utility. It takes so long for all these things to happen.
Yeah, which can be good, again, if you're abusing it. But yeah, if you really I want Chapter 3, and you don't have any way to get there faster, I don't know that's probably good in your deck. The Birth of Meletis is the next one. 1 in white. Chapter 1. Search your library for a basic Plains card, reveal it, and... put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Why didn't it go onto the battlefield?
Because it's not white, Josh. We got so close, but you know what's
Night of the White Orchid does it. There is precedent. This could have easily put it onto the battlefield. Why not?
I know. It could have even been like if you control an enchantment, put it on the battlefield.
Well, this is an enchantment.
Exactly.
Such a missed opportunity. Okay. Chapter 2, create a 0/4 colorless wall artifact creature token with Defender, and then Chapter 3, gain 2 life. So
maybe they didn't want to put it in a white, ramp card in standard. I don't know.
That's all I got to say about it.
Yeah. Well, if this was the commander sort of thing, you remember how we were talking about last year with commander, the whole commander stuff for this year,
right.
We're going to get a commander product side by side. Maybe if Theros Beyond Death had a commander side product, the Birth of Meletus could have helped us out a little more.
Yeah. Maybe.
Who knows?
That wouldn't be broken. Because none of the other things... It makes an 0/4 and gains you 2 life for the other 2 parts.
Yeah. It'd be funny if the second and the third chapters were just actually awful. Like, they hurt you.
Yeah, but
it was just like, fine, I'll take it.
Because I want to put a land into play. It's a plains. It's not any land, so it's not even as good as Rampant Growth.
True.
Okay.
All right. The first Eroan Games is the green version, 2 in a green. Four chapters on this one. Chapter 1, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Green is doing white better than white is right now.
Yeah.
Chapter 2, put 3+1/+1 counters on target creature you control. 3+1/+1 counters?
They're training.
Oh, I get it. Chapter 3, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw 2 cards.
They're competing.
Chapter 4, create a gold token.
They won the gold.
And wow, let's just compare the power level between this and the white one.
Yeah, I know.
You're drawing cards and making gold, which is technically ramp.
You're making a creature bigger. I mean, how much? That costs 1 more mana, so it's not even like that much more. You get a 4/4 out of it that then draws you 2 cards, and then you get 1 of your mana back. So it actually costs 2 mana at the end of it. And also, that's way better to abuse because, either you're making more tokens or drawing more cards.
Or putting more gold tokens.
Yeah.
All right, let's not talk about
But green's already the best color in Commander, or one of the top 2. So
well, green definitely got fed a whole lot of goodies this set, including our preview card.
And the last one in this cycle, there are more sagas besides these 5, but we're just talking about them because of the story, and we think it's fun.
The Eroan Games, by the way, are the Olympics, right?
Right, that's why I said, then you win the gold. Sorry, that wasn't clear. The last one is the Triumph of Annex. It's 2 in a red. Chapter 1, 2, and 3 are the same.
Oh.
So until end of turn, target creature gains trample and +X/+0, where X is the number of lore counters on Triumph of Annex.
Oh, cool.
So the first turn, target creature gets +1/+0, then it gets +2/+0, then it gets +3/+0. And then on the 4th chapter, it says, target creature you control fights up to 1 target creature you don't control.
Oh, they're training super hard in this one then.
Yeah, this one's interesting because I originally thought it was the Labyrinth Minotaur, the Theseus story, but actually Morrow came on and said that Annex was Leonidas, who is the king of the Spartans from 300. Right. So this must be the story of 300. And I read somewhere the Minotaurs are like an army.
Yeah.
So they must be the stand-in for the Achaemenid Persian Empire.
Right.
And this is the stand at the Hot Gates at Thermopylae. So there you go. That's my guess as far as what the story is.
Well, you can't stop them because for 3 straight turns, they're just punching harder and harder and harder. Right?
Yeah, but there's not very many of them. They're just getting bigger, but they fight, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we move on, speaking of the Saga deck, I think let's talk about real quick. You need to run 5 color sagas right now to try and make it work because there's just not there's 5 white sagas. This is total. This is not in this set. There's just total in existence right now. 5 white sagas, 5 blue sagas, 6 black sagas, 4 red sagas, and 4 green sagas.
Okay.
So I think it's the top commanders for a saga deck or potential are Ramos, Kenrith, Golos, because they have 5 colors. But Atraxa probably is the best one because it proliferates and does interact with the sagas, but you lose a color.
I mean, do we care about that color?
Well, right now there aren't very many sagas, so you're losing like 4 or so sagas by not having it. But maybe that's fine.
Yeah, it could be fine. I mean, Atraxa, I think, is fun just for the proliferate, and then Kenrith seems good just because you can...
Just generically good.
Yeah, just generically good enough and you'll stay alive.
If you do build a saga deck, I want to see the list.
Yes, me too.
Send it to us on Twitter or whatever. In the comments. On Discord.
All right. Next up is our second cycle that we'll be talking about in this set is the intervention cycle. So all of the gods need to intervene, obviously, because they're gods, and that's classically what they've always done throughout mythology.
They can never just stay up there. They always got to meddle.
Yeah, well, human lives, I guess, are inherently interesting to them for whatever reason. First up, we have Erebos' intervention. By the way, people say if you zoom in on this whip, you can tell that they're all made of humans and corpses, which is kind of crazy. On this or the regular Erebos, I forget which one. It's X in the black for an instant. Choose one. Target creature gets -X until end of turn, and you gain X life. Or exile up to twice X target cards from graveyards.
Remember, it's an instant for black and X, so I actually think this card is quite good.
Yes, I think it's good. It's removal / it's like a very powerful graveyard exile effect. That it's not symmetrical and you can choose your targets.
It can totally hose things too because they go to target it with an effect and it's instant. So you go boom, remove that stuff out from under you and now you get nothing.
Yeah, it can come out of nowhere for sure.
And the bad thing about Graveyard Hate and why we don't put a ton of it on our decks a lot of times is because it feels really bad when you're holding a card that only cares about graveyards and nobody's playing a deck that cares about graveyards.
Yeah.
In this case, you're like, oh, fine, I'll just use it to kill something and gain some life. And it's instant speed, so you don't even have to like do it on your turn. You just hold up till your end step. I didn't do anything else. Kill that thing, gain some life. I use the card, go on about my life.
Yeah, but if you know that your opponents are all running decks that really care about the graveyards, then maybe you hold on to it a little bit longer.
Yeah, you can totally hose them at some point. The next one is the white one, also quite good. Heliod's Intervention.
Thank goodness.
White, and X for an instant. It's amazing what the word instant will do to a card. It says, choose one. You can either destroy X target artifacts and or enchantments.
Oh.
So 5 mana, blow up 3 artifacts and enchantments at instant speed. That's just freaking great right there.
Yeah.
Or you can say target player gains twice X life. Not going to do that very often, but once in a while, maybe you look around and there's nothing you want to destroy artifacts or enchantments wise. I mean, you can always dump 9 mana into this thing and blow up basically all of your opponent's enchantments and artifacts at instant speed too. So you're not vulnerable. You do it on the end step before your turn.
Like Return to Dust says you have to cast it as a sorcery to get rid of 2 things that's 4 mana.
2 things for 4 mana. This is 2 things for 4 mana. Instant speed.
Yeah. So this is just
great. It doesn't exile, but
it's still pretty darn good. All right.
And Return to Dust doesn't scale. Like if you happen to have 10 mana, it doesn't do any more than it did when you had 4 mana. So yeah.
Good point. All right, Nylea's Intervention. X green. Choose one, search your library for up to X land cards, reveal them, put them into your hand.
Okay, hand.
And shuffle your library. This is a sorcery, thank goodness. And Nylea's Intervention deals twice X damage to each creature with flying. So there's a theme here. In the second mode, it's usually twice of something of what X is. But X land cards, it's
pretty good. Thank goodness it doesn't go on the battlefield because that would be nuts. And thank goodness it's not instant. So I think this one's quite a bit worse than the other two. Probably still mildly playable if you wanted to, but I think green's just in general able to do that better.
Yeah, green will Sylvan Scry for 1 and a green for a specific land card. Now, if you can do X green and get, if you're playing...
It's basics though, right?
No, X land cards.
Oh, that does make it way better.
Yeah, because you could just do the whole Cabal Coffers Urborg thing.
So 4 mana, get Cabal Coffers and Urborg?
Yeah.
That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, because Expedition Map is 2 mana and you only get 1.
I didn't realize it wasn't basics.
Yeah. So, I mean, Nylea's Intervention, the sorcery is the only thing that really doesn't, set it over the edge.
It got way better, because also Guy's Cradle, Nykthos Shine to Nyx, which is going to be even better right now because of Devotion being such a thing. Yeah. I changed my mind. Even 3 mana, go get a land at the worst case is not the worst.
Yeah, it's 1 more mana than Sylvan Scrying, so.
Yeah, okay. All right, I stand corrected. That card's really good.
All right, it's okay.
Green Dang it! I was like, yeah, green doesn't need anything. They're fine. They got tons. If you can see in front of us, we have sort of all the piles of cards sorted by color.
Guess which one's the biggest?
Yeah, the green one's the biggest. The blue one's the second biggest,
and the red one's the smallest.
Yeah, it's not all equal, right? Because there might be like 1 card in a color that's more powerful. But
there are already 2 cards in the green pile that I know are better than probably the rest of the cards in the pile.
Yeah, true. All right, so the red intervention is Perforos' Intervention. Red and X for a sorcery.
Come on, red. Do me good.
I'm sorry, Jimmy. Choose one. Create an X1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste, but sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So if you pay 9 mana into this thing, you'll get an 8/1 trample haste that will, one way or another, die at the beginning of the next end step.
Okay.
Or you can say Perforos' Intervention deals twice X damage to target creature or planeswalker.
You
can't hit players.
I quit.
Yeah.
I rage quit.
Yeah, this one's pretty bad. I don't think we're probably playing that card ever.
No. Who wants... All right. Thassa's Intervention, X blue. Instant, choose one, look at the top X cards of your library, put up to 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. or counter target spell unless his controller pays twice X. I think this one's actually not bad.
I think it's quite good.
Yeah, you get to draw 2 cards.
You have to pay 4 mana to draw 2.
Yeah, otherwise you're paying 7 mana to look at 5, draw 2, which isn't awful. That's also what Dig Through Time basically is, minus the delve.
Yep.
And then having a counter spell around as well could be really nice, because sometimes you'll just play 1 blue and stop something.
I like the duality too, because it's good in the instant where you need the counterspell, and where you don't, you just draw cards. So it was worth holding up your mana for that, right?
Yeah, not many counterspells do that. Have the ability
to draw Command-y, right? Where it's like, okay, well, or Mystic Confluence. Those are 2 reasons why those cards are so good, is because so flexible. Okay, if something really scary happens, I will stop it. But if it doesn't, then I will just get card advantage, and that does that. So I like it. All right, those are the cycles. We're gonna go into the colors now. We'll start with blue. Blue has a couple of really good
strange
cards.
ones. This is a weird card.
Yeah, this card is interesting. It's Ashiok's Erasure, 2 blue for an enchantment with flash.
Okay.
When Ashiok's Erasure enters the battlefield, exile target spell.
Ah.
Don't counter it, exile it. But that's a spell on the stack, right? Mm-hmm. Your opponents can't cast spells with the same name as the exiled card. Your opponents. So if I Ashiok's Erasure Jimmy's Soul Ring, my opponents cannot cast Soul Rings now. Interesting. When Ashiok's Erasure leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to its owner's hand, which is, I think, pretty good, because a lot of these cards cast it at that point. Mm-hmm. So at least they still have to cast it again.
Yeah. Ashiok's Erasure is an enchantment counterspell in a weird way. If I'm playing a Perforos deck and then someone else plays their copy of Perforos and Josh counters it with Ashiok's Erasure, I can't play my commander anymore.
That sucks. That could be real political. Like, hey, cast your Perforos.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise, like, I don't know. If you find a way to instant speed flicker the enchantment, it could constantly counter different things, but it's actually very, very hard to do that because it's a permanent.
Yeah, the timing is tough on it, because like Braga could do it, but it comes back at the end step, and at which point they're probably not going to cast a spell.
Yeah, so it's
into it.
And you have to, like they would have to cast a spell with the trigger on the stack for you to counter it. I don't know.
If you turn it into a creature somehow, then you could Deadeye Navigator, or it'll draw you Displacer, and it's going to come back right away. That's a lot of hoops to jump through. Might not be worth it, but interesting.
It's an interesting card to think about regardless, but also it's really good against Shadowborn Apostles decks.
Shut up.
Persistent Petitioners.
Why are you talking about that?
Relentless Rats. But still a 4-mana counter that's very situational and kind of weird. Okay, moving onwards,
Tell the truth. You put this one on the list just because you wanted to try and say it?
Yeah. Ichthyomorphosis. That's like a weird fish.
Ichthyomorphosis. Ichthyomorphosis.
That might be better. Or more... Itchy.
Ichthyomorphosis or ichthyomorphosis?
Itchy Morphe. 2 in the blue, and enchant creature. Enchant creature loses all abilities in the blue fish with base power and toughness 0/1.
Yay, it's cool. We got to say it.
Tychthus' military career was a flop. It's cool. I mean, it can get rid of
it's like a bad Darksteel mutation.
Yeah, you're getting rid of like enchantment gods, essentially, is what this card says at the common slot.
All right, the next one is a blue saga. It's a mythic rare saga, though. It's Kiora Bests the Sea God.
You go, Kiora.
So it's 5 blue, 7 mana enchantment saga. Strap in. It's pretty good, though. Chapter 1. Create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token with hexproof. Release the Kraken!
All right, Kiora, it's up to you now.
Chapter 2. Tap all non-land permanents target opponent controls. They don't untap during their controller's next untap step. So tap all their not lands, and they get stasis for that stuff, basically, for the next turn. And then Chapter 3, gain control of target permanent in opponent controls and untap it.
7 mana steal 1 thing after 3 turns is not amazing, but the other 2 things are pretty good. You make an 8/8.
You make an 8/8 with hexproof. You basically like destroy somebody, because like if you tap them down, especially if it's like the player to your right, and they're not going to untap, so that's just 2 turns where they're basically like wide open.
Yeah, I think not just your 80, but everyone else's stuff on the board after you have a 7 mana spell out.
I mean, obviously, there are 7 mana enchantments, Mind's Dilations, and things like that that are very Swarm Intelligence, very, very powerful if you get them out. And this is maybe not exactly on that level, but it sits in a different slot. And I actually like this card as like a sort of fair finisher. It's like the table could team up and overcome it, but it's going to do a lot, and it's going to make for a kind of a cool game. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, it feels bad to remove this with an enchantment removal spell too, for sure.
Because they already got an 8/8 out of it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, are you going to tap down my stuff, or should I remove that? Or are you going to tap
steal
somebody
my
else's
stuff? Yeah. Well, maybe I don't care.
And again, with shenanigans, removing adding counters, messing with the counters,
destroying artifacts.
You could do a lot of things, you know.
Brago's fun with this because you can just keep making 8/8s.
Yeah, because you just flicker this
maybe
thing.
Maybe that's why you just want a 7-mana repeatable 8/8 maker. Yenet Cryptic Sovereign is one of those good. Yeah, because it's a 7-mana card. You can get that out of there.
I really like it with Flood of Tears, so that's the mass bounce spell, but if you bounce at least 4 of your own things, you can put a permanent into play. So you put this in play, go, I got an 8/8, and also you have nothing, and then the stuff you play, I'm going to tap it down and one tap.
Yeah, I'm going to keep smacking you. Yeah. Academy Rector can definitely get this right onto the battlefield as well. You again, like we said, you want to put cards like this into the battlefield at instant speed. So Thran Temporal Gateway.
A Jimmy favorite.
Yeah, because as you can actually say that you may put a historic permanent from your hand onto the battlefield, and artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are historic. This was added in Dominaria, this sort of new type of card.
Yep.
Or what they classify it as.
So that's really good. Like on your end step, get this out, get the 8/8. On your draw step, tap down somebody's stuff for 2 turns, swing with the 8/8, and the next turn you're going to steal the best thing on the board. So yeah, I dig this card.
All right, time to make the Kraken Tribal deck finally. It's Nadir Kraken. 1 blue for a 2/3 creature Kraken. Whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1 mana. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Nadir Kraken and create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. So it's like spouting another arm to attack you with.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah, this Kraken
It's another
thing.
tentacle.
Yeah, so the card that came to mind was Kindred Discovery, which is a very powerful card that as it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type, for instance, Kraken, or in this case, Tentacle. And whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card. So you draw a card, you pay 1, Kindred Discovery puts that new tentacle on the battlefield, and then boom, it's like
draws you a card,
draws you another card, pay 1 more, and then if you have a card like Mana Echoes out, you can just
boy.
make infinite guys and draw
Mana
your
Echoes gives you mana equal to the number of the chosen creature type. So again, you're going to say tentacles and just be like, oh, another one came in, I get 3 mana, which pays for the card draw.
And another one is going to give me 4 mana, 5 mana, and you can go as much as you want until you want to stop paying for the Nadir Kraken.
That's pretty good. Ashnod's Altar will also do a decent impression of that, giving you the mana from sacrificing the creature that just came into play.
And with Mentor of the Meek, you get to draw a card from that and just kind of keep going on that fun time.
Skull Clamp, really good with 1/1s, and even better with 1/1s that keep getting made when you draw more cards. I thought Jeskai Ascendancy just got to work with this somehow because you draw a ton of cards when you have Jeskai Ascendancy out.
Yeah, and you're drawing, discarding, and doing all sorts of cool stuff.
And you're pumping all your creatures, so you're kind of tokeny, so that would be good.
Right.
There's a couple of cards that you remove +1/+1 counters and draw cards, so don't forget the Nadir Kraken gets a +1 counter. It's easy to just say, oh, it makes a token, but it also gets a +1 counter.
Yeah, it gets massive.
So how do you say that word? Novajin Sages and Sage of Fables. Is it Sage of Fables?
Yeah.
Those allow you to pay a little bit of mana, remove +1 counters, and then draw cards.
Right.
And so then that can fuel it, right? Like, oh, then I draw a card, which I pay 1, and it puts another counter on it, and then I remove the counter, and then I draw 1, which puts another. So you can... Again, this is a not go infinite, but go a lot type of strategy right there. Yeah,
the card seems actually really good. It just seems like it can do a lot, and it's going to be annoying whenever it's on the battlefield. So.
It's going to be super annoying and limited.
Yeah, let's not. I don't even want to imagine it. There are a few cards.
I want to imagine it in my hand on my side of the battlefield.
Playing limited in this set is going to be. I mean, anytime there are cards that are legendary and indestructible, you're in for a rough time if someone cracks it in their packs.
All right, the next one is interesting. It's called One with the Stars.
With the Stars. Okay.
3 and a blue for an enchantment aura. You can enchant creature or enchantment.
Ooh.
I don't know why you'll ever enchant an enchantment, and here's why. Because it says enchanted permanent is an enchantment and loses all other card types. It still has its abilities, but it's no longer a creature.
Maybe it's just for the gods.
Oh, no, wait. Murph explained this to me. It says enchantment because as soon as you enchant the thing, it becomes an enchantment.
Oh.
So it would fall off if it didn't say enchantment.
That makes sense.
It has to be able to enchant a creature or enchantment.
And I guess it works if the god has not found its devotion to be alive yet, because it can't be a creature anymore, right?
True, but it won't do anything because then it has its abilities but isn't a creature, and that's what it is already if it's not devoted.
Well, it loses all other card types. It's no longer a creature's.
Right, but you don't, like...
I think...
Again, if it was on the battlefield and didn't have... It wasn't a creature because you're not devoted, then this will just make it not a creature, which is the same as it was.
Well, then, but if they get to devotion, it's not going to become a creature anymore.
True.
So,
but usually the gods, like, it's the text that you're worried about.
Actually, you might be helping them out because they don't want them
exactly.
to be creatures.
This is interesting because it could totally hose certain commanders.
Yeah.
Where you turn it into enchantment. Because a lot of these cards, like, what was the Islamorphosis thingy? that turns it into like a fish or whatever, right?
Yeah, it turns into a 0/1 fish
with no abilities, but they can sack it. They can a lot of times block. They can just use a destroy creature spell. Most decks have that.
Yeah.
But if they don't have a destroy enchantment, they usually can't sack an enchantment, right? Ashnod's Altar won't work anymore. Although they do it in response to you casting this, I suppose. But they couldn't then play an Ashnod's Altar and do it, or like they can't untap their high market and then sack it to put it back in the command zone. So this has the opportunity, but sometimes it'll just do nothing because they only care about the text box on their commander, and this doesn't turn that off.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I guess it just depends if they want that creature. If it was a Voltron deck, then this would definitely screw them over.
Big time.
Like red or something. But white and green can remove enchantments. Every other color has a bit of trouble doing that.
All right, this is a big one.
Yes, this is one that has definitely caught the eye of a lot of people. And if you look at the card, the entire thing is text.
The CEDH community, I must have talked to like 5 or 6 of them about this card. They're all very worried about it. So let's read it first and we'll talk about it.
Thassa's Oracle, blue for a 1/3. Wizards has problems printing the cards that cost blue, by the way.
Yes, it's true.
It's like high likelihood it will be problematic.
A very high percentage of the best cards in the history of Magic have blue in their cost.
All right, creature Merfolk Wizard. When Thassa's Oracle enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your devotion to blue. So when you cast this, minimum 2. Put up to 1 of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And then for some reason it says, if X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. So I guess there's another Lab Maniac type effect.
This is better than Lab Man.
Oh, it's way better.
By like a lot. Because, okay, so if you don't know what Lab Maniac does, it says when you go to draw a card, if you have no cards in your library, instead of losing the game, you win the game. And there's Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, who is a Planeswalker version of that, which is also very good. And most decks that run Labman will run both, and that's a very common win condition in CEDH decks and just very powerful decks in general. They're milling themselves out, turbo milling themselves, usually all in one turn, and then winning because of that.
They have to draw a card to do it, though.
So there's 2 things. Yeah, Labman makes you, or I'm just going to say Labman. Jace is the same. Jace is a little better sometimes because the activated ability on the Planeswalker will do the draw card for you. Because once you have 0 cards in your library, you still have to go to draw a card to lose. Or sorry, to win. Thassa's Oracle...
You're losing in my mind, though.
Yeah. But you're vulnerable in that moment because a couple of things can happen. One is they can counter whatever you try and cast that makes you draw a card, gives them a little more time.
Right.
They can also kill the Labman or the Jace, in which case you now go to draw the card and actually lose rather than win. So
you mill.
Yeah, so it's a little bit risky. Thassa's Oracle is a trigger that's on the stack.
Yeah.
Once it hits the battlefield, it doesn't matter what happens to Thassa's Oracle. The trigger's on the stack.
Yeah.
So now you're down to like stifles and stuff. Kill spells don't do anything for you.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking like, wow, but still it's hard to do that, right? It's hard to
get your devotion or scry so high that it's going to be more than the cards in your library.
It's actually quite easy to do with a lot of combos. A lot of them have to do with Protean Hulk. Protean Hulk.
Flash.
Yeah, so Flash Hulk is just a thing that's going on in CEDH a lot. Flash allows you to get Hulk out at instant speed and sacrifice it. So
very cheap for 2 mana.
1 in a blue.
Flash, and then you put a creature card from your hand on the battlefield, but you sacrifice it unless you pay its mana cost. But you don't do it with Protean Hulk because when it dies, you search your library for any number of creature cards with total converted mana cost 6 or less, and you put them on the battlefield. So this will instantly get out 2, 3, 4, combo pieces.
So what you get is there's a couple different choices. You usually get Spell Seeker, which is a card that lets you go find an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost 2 or less. So you go find Demonic Consultation with that, which is a 1 black for an instant. And it says you name a card, and then you exile cards from the top of your library until you hit that card. Thing is, you can name a card that's not even in your deck. You'll just exile your entire deck.
Yeah.
So that's a way to immediately mill yourself out.
And then you have another 2 mana left to get Thassa's Oracle.
You actually have 3 mana left.
Oh, 3 mana left, yeah.
So
2 of it's for Thassa's Oracle.
And then 1 more for Blood Pet, which is a 1 black mana for a creature that you sacrifice to give you the 1 black to cast Demonic Consultation. If you have the black mana sitting there, then you can instead get something like Curse Catcher, which is basically a force spike on a creature which can protect.
Yeah.
It can potentially counter anything that's trying to disrupt you. So they go to stifle you. If they don't have an extra mana, you can actually protect the combo.
Jeez.
Yeah, so this is like a really hard combo to stop. A lot of CDH people, Brayden, who's on our Discord, was explaining all of this to me about how everybody's so worried about it.
Yeah, there's also the Cephalid Illusionist, which whenever it becomes a target of a spell ability, you mill yourself 3, and then there's a bunch of cards that cost 0 to target a creature, like Nomad's Encore and Shaman Encore both have the 0 ability that can just target a creature, so you just use it infinite times, you just mill all the cards out of your library.
And you still have the Protean Hulk mana left over to get Thassa's Oracle in those cases.
Yeah.
And so you just turbo mill yourself, Thassa's Oracle, trigger hits, and you've got 0 cards in your library, so it's automatically going to do 2, and boom. Yes, because that's the thing. Because if some people out there are probably going, yeah, but what if we kill Thassa's Oracle and your devotion to blue is 0? But if you have 0 cards in your library, that's still, you win the game.
Yeah, you have to draw from that to lose when you're milling. So you have cards like Thought Lash, which someone tweeted at us, which just has the exile the top card of your library, prevent the next one damage that will be dealt to this turn. You can just do that for the entire thing of your library, and it's just an enchantment. Like, there are so many ways to get your library to 0 cards, and Thassa's Oracle just makes that win condition that Labman and Jace had way easier. Because you don't even need to get to 0, right? If you have like 4 devotion, then you scryed for X.
All those combos just get to 0 though, so there's not even any reason to stop it for like...
Unless someone somehow can stop it, but who knows? Either way, it's powerful. It's very powerful, and it will win many, many games of CEDH.
The big thing the competitive players are worried about, from what I hear, is also that this all happens at instant speed. Flash is an instant speed card. Demonic Consultation is an instant speed card. So you can combo over the top of somebody else's combo. So everybody ends up sitting there with Flash in hand and Protean Hulk, scared to play it, because if I play it and go off, well, then you could play yours.
And you'll win before me.
Right, because your Thassa Oracle trigger is down there, but I just put my triggers on top of yours. So there's maybe a counterspell war or a tap out or whatever, and then somebody tries to win, and then somebody wins over the top of them. So what ends up happening is everybody just sits there staring at each other, not doing anything, because everybody, if they try, and so pretty interesting. We'll see where this goes. I think there's been a lot of cards in the past where people have gone crazy with this. Let's ban this thing before it's even out. So predictions don't always come true. Let's see how this plays out. But
this might be one of the few that could actually merit a serious discussion before it actually happens.
Yeah, Flash, we'll talk about it in a second here because it's going to come up again. Flash is the card that everyone's been aiming at as far as a potential ban, and I've been against it for a while, but it's possible that maybe we give it another look here.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
All right, chicken before the egg, right? Which is the real problem. You never know. It's hard to figure that one out. All right, let's move on to green. First up, we got Destiny Spinner. Interesting card. 1 in the green for an enchantment creature human. It's a 2/3. Yeah, pretty good for limited already. Creature and enchantment spells that you control can't be countered. That's
cool.
Yeah.
Actually, Erasure don't care, but that's cool.
Yeah, 3 in the green. You can also target the land, and then target land you control becomes an XX elemental creature with trample and haste until end of turn, where X is the number of enchantments you control. It's still a land. So by itself, this makes for 4 mana a land into a 1/1.
Because that's 1 enchantment.
Yeah, but the top part of the text is definitely where it's more interesting.
And I think it does have some mana sync capabilities in those, Enchantress decks. They have trouble like winning. They generate a ton of value, but they're just spinning wheels. This is a way to be like, okay, now I've got 7 enchantments out, 8 enchantments out. I'm just going to pay mana, turn these things into creatures, now start swinging and actually winning the game.
Yeah, I mean, the elemental part, if you want to make an elemental deck, sure. I could see this better in a deck like Animar, of course, because again, you're trying to cast many creature spells. But otherwise, it just seems pretty good.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's nothing amazing, but it's an interesting effect. That top line of text is really what intrigued us the most.
All right, here's a pretty good one. 2 in a green for a 2/4. It's called Dryad of the Elysian Grove. 3 mana 2/4. Enchantment creature Nymph. It says you may play an additional land on each of your turns.
Okay.
So it's already really good. 3 mana 2/4 that has exploration on it.
Yeah.
Right? That's great because exploration costs 1 green mana. So for 2 mana, you got a 2/4.
Yeah, let's staple on another ability to it.
Yeah,
Gosh, why
and
not?
then it says lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types.
That's Prismatic Omen.
And it just came on a 2/4 for 3 that also has exploration on it.
Yeah. This helps out 5-color decks like crazy, for one.
It's also just good in all those landfall decks.
Landfall for sure. Scape Shift is now just insane.
Yep.
Scape Shift and Valakut, every single land that comes in is a mountain, and it's going to blow someone up. Scape Shift and Dread Presence, every single land is also a swamp, so it's going to draw you a ton of cards and deal a bunch of damage, or you might just win the game, because it's every single land now is going to become that because of Dryad.
Oh yeah, Cabal Coffers, just another thing to turn on Cabal Coffers.
Crypt Ghast.
Just
Why
generically, boringly, very powerful. Here's the thing, too. The landfall decks, there's so many of them now, like the Lord Windgrace decks and the Gitrog decks and all that stuff, the Azusa decks. And there's so many. Are we at... I guess the question I would ask is, if you had one of those decks, are you adding Dryad and taking out another card that says play an additional land on each of your turns? Or do you still want more cards that say that? Because right now we got Exploration, Burgeoning, Gitrog, Wayward Swordtooth, Azusa, Oracle of Moldiah. Like, do you need another one of those? You're just replacing one? Or are we still like, no, I want another one of those? Maybe we are.
If you're someone that can't afford some of the more expensive versions, then yeah, maybe you do want your Swordtooths and your Dryads, because they're newer sets and they'll be easier to get.
Or maybe you want all of them. Maybe you want 9 of that in your and we're not at terminal velocity yet, or we're not replacing it. It's just,
Well, in this case, it's great because it just combos so well with those decks that do use Scape Shift to win the game.
Yeah.
Like, it's like nuts.
Yeah. Very, very powerful card.
All right. Now, okay, this one's not as powerful, but it's still fun. It's Hydra's Growth, 2 and a green for an enchantment aura. You enchant a creature. When it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on enchanted creature. And at the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of +1/+1 counters on the enchanted creature. So this is a good card in... Again, Animar, obviously. Gave wants to get a lot of +1/+1 counters. Forgotten Ancient is a card that moves +1/+1 counters around. Champion of Lamholt is a card that makes your creatures unblockable. So, if you're in the +1/+1 counters deck, this is a pretty decent enchantment aura, as long as you're not getting things removed too fast.
The next one is a new mana dork. It's Elysian Caryatid. 1 and a green for a 1/1 plant. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, or if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you can add 2 mana of any one color instead.
Hey, another Animar card. Jeez.
And just a good card, I think, in general, if your commander is 4 power or greater, because it helps cast it 1 turn early, and then it turbos you out past that. Yeah. So I think just a good mana dork in general.
Yeah, we do love a good mana dork here. Nessian Wanderer, next green card, 1 and a green for a creature, Satyr Scout, 1/3. With Constellation, our first instance of seeing that this set review. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a land card from among them and put that card into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
So this is like a partial enchantress, right? Because it's probably going to draw you a card almost every time an enchantment enters the battlefield. Now, that card will be a land, but you do need land, so it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I would put that probably in an Enchantress decks, or enchantment decks want as many enchantresses as they can get. We're just using Enchantress as generic. Whenever you cast or play or enters the battlefield, you draw a card.
Yeah.
Those are the value engines of the enchantment decks. Speaking of enchantments, here's our preview card. Created quite a splash when we released it, as we knew it would.
Yeah.
Nyxbloom Ancient, 4 green, 7 mana for a 5/5 enchantment creature elemental, has trample, but the real text is this. If you tap a permanent for mana, it produces 3 times as much of that mana instead. A permanent, not just a land.
Soaring taps for 6. Signets tap for 6.
This is crazy. Now, we did an entire preview card episode talking about this, but I did want to mention a few things that we neglected to mention on that episode. So we forgot it was an enchantment creature, kind of. We didn't talk about Academy Rector as a way to cheat this into play.
Yep.
So Academy Rector is a creature. When it dies, you can find an enchantment from your
battlefield,
from your library, put it on the battlefield. Usually you go get Omniscience, but maybe you don't have blue in the deck. This is a pretty good second, close to Omniscience, right? Because, listen, all my spells aren't technically free, but I have so much mana that they basically are.
Yeah.
You can also use the monoliths with this. We didn't talk about that. So Basalt Monolith taps for 3 mana, costs 3 mana to untap it. Well, when it taps for 9 mana, you use 3 of that mana to untap it, still have 6 left. Tap it for 9 mana, you got 15. And now we're infinite mana. Grim Monolith, same thing. And then Flash, here's that card we were talking about earlier. People are talking about Flash as a really good target for this. So again, Flash is 1 in a blue. Creature goes onto the battlefield, and then you can either pay its mana cost
-2
or sack it. But it's on the battlefield while that triggers on the stack. So for 2 mana, you get this out, and then tap your other 6 lands for 18 mana and say, I decline to pay for the Nyxbloomation and let it go. Or you can say, I'll pay for it.
Nyxbloomation, yeah,
and I still am up mana.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. And, if people want Flash banned, Maybe if it has a broken usage in casual circles, that'll be more likely to happen. I don't know.
Yeah. It needs to also, sort of tying in with why the other cards were recently banned, Ionas, it needs to make play experience that miserable for other people.
Which I don't know that this does. And also, I think one of the arguments that the competitive people make in favor of banning Flash is like, hey, casuals don't play it. So if you ban it, it doesn't affect them. So if all of a sudden there's a card like Nyx Bloom where they're going to start playing the card Flash, they're really not going to want us to ban it. So I don't know.
True.
I don't know. The Flash banning is something we're going to, I'm sure, go round and round about with the CAG and the RC. So who knows how that'll turn out.
0 copies of Flash in my decks, though.
Let's keep that one aside because I think we're going to talk about it later.
Okay.
Yeah, well, these two.
He's nice. Yeah, 2 of the green ones we put aside because they're just that good.
Big surprise!
Big surprise. Cetacean Champion, 2 in a green for a 1/3 with Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Cetacean Champion and draw a card. It's an Enchantress that gets bigger.
So there are basically 2 new enchantresses. One's lands only. Still pretty good for your enchantment decks.
Yeah, and just more, the more the merrier. In this case, enchantresses are usually like 1/1, so they die to a lot of things. This one actually just gets massive.
Yeah, it's true. Eventually, it can maybe smack somebody and help you win the game.
Yeah.
All right, that was green. We've still got a bunch of colors to go. We got multicolored. We got artifacts. Really, I think the big question that I had going into the set review was whether or not white was going to sort of continue this trend we've seen where it's very underwhelming, or whether they're able to do something in the set that starts to bring white up to a power level like we'd like. We'd like them to start making white better so that white's better in the Commander format, because right now it's just way behind. So we'll see whether or not that is the case.
Now moving on to my favorite color, and clearly the color that Wizards loves the most as well, as they've only printed bomb upon bomb for this color.
There's one really good card in red this time, and there's some good ones in general.
Thank goodness.
But there's not very many, sorry.
Yeah, I know. Well, this first one is not that card.
It's pretty cool, though.
It's cool. It's Dreamshaper Shaman for the Minotaur decks. 5 in a red for a 5/4 Minotaur Shaman enchantment creature. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay 2 in a red and sacrifice a non-land permanent. If you do, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-land permanent card, and put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This almost could have been ramp if it said put a land on. But you sacrifice a non-land to get the next non-land out of your deck. So this could cheat some massive things into play. The Eldrazi, I know a lot
and
of
they just stay. It's not like sacrifice it or anything. Like, that's just there now.
Yeah.
Just transmute.
And you could see, you could get rid of a token. You can get rid of all sorts of different things that red might have lying around a treasure token. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want top deck manipulation to know what's there, and then if what you're sacrificing is worth it.
Yeah.
But then it can be very powerful. Strionic Resonator, maybe another thing where you can get 2 triggers.
It is cheating a mana cost, which is something red hasn't had too much of in the past. The only problem is that the creature is 6 mana and the ability costs 3, and you have to wait to your end step. So a lot of hoops to jump through, but it is something new still.
It's cool. It's going to be hard to use, but could do some cool stuff. This next one's interesting. A little more card draw for red, possibly. Furious Rise is what it's called. It's 2 in a red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until you exile another card with Furious Rise. Now remember, you do this at the beginning of your end step. Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because if it's an instant or something, you could play it during the opponent's turns. And if not, you'll have the entirety of your next turn to play it, and then you'll exile another card off the top of your library, in which case, if you haven't cast the card you exiled previously, you now don't have access to it.
Yeah, this is card draw for red with creatures with power 4 or greater.
I think if your commander is power 4 or greater, then there's a decent chance it's going to be out a decent amount of the game. This is sketchy, though, because after a board wipe, it suddenly turns off. Things like that. It is your end step, though, so you could recover by playing your commander again. Yeah. I think it's pretty good, and in some decks it will be better than like Outpost Siege or something like that.
Yep, but you can play the card, so lands do get to be cast off of it. Not cast off, this played off of this. So, okay, cool. I'm digging it. As far as red's concerned, 2 cards now that kind of break apart from what red needs.
Yeah.
It break in the right direction.
And this one is even more like, wait, red can do what?
Yeah, 2 in a red. Storm Herald, 3/2 with haste. When Storm Herald enters the battlefield, return any number of aura cards from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to creatures you control. Exile those auras at the beginning of the next end step. And if those auras would leave the battlefield, exile them instead of putting them anywhere else. So this card would come in. It does have haste. It's going to bring all those auras back on, slap it onto him or any other creature, and then at the end step, they get exiled. But that's like a white effect.
Yeah, red is like reanimating auras?
I guess on Theros, anything is possible.
I mean, it's cool. I like it because it maybe opens up some stuff, and there's a Valduk deck that's like a red auras deck. So maybe they're maybe they're trying to like make red auras a thing, and this is a piece in that. Like, I don't think this is real broad. Like, you're not going to put in a lot of red decks, but it's an interesting effect. And the fact that they're starting to say, like, maybe red can do this kind of thing. Maybe they'll push that a little further, and we can, in the future, start to go down a red enchantment path.
We'll see. I hate enchantment auras. They're some of the most fragile things in the world, but this is, again, another positive step. And finally, the big whammy, the one I'm most excited about.
Yeah, here's a card. This is a real card. It's called Underworld Breach. 1 in a red, 2 mana only for an enchantment. Each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exile 3 other cards from your library. That means you're casting any non-land card from your graveyard by paying its mana cost and then exiling 3 other cards. It does say at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice Underworld Breach, because remember, it's an enchantment. We're used to this kind of thing being like a sorcery. Yawgmoth's Will and Past in Flames are the 2 closest analogs that I could think of for this.
Yeah, and Past in Flames only cares about instants and sorceries.
Yawgmoth's Will, I'd say a top 25 card in the format, maybe top 30 card in the format as far as power level, and I believe that Underworld Breach is in many ways more powerful than Yawgmoth's Will.
Because when you escape them, it doesn't exile them upon resolution. They just go back to the graveyard. So you could actually recast the same thing. Oh, no, you can't. You can't. Because when this land, then it gives all your cards escape. So you'd have to flicker it to give the cards escape again, right?
No, it's an enchantment, so it doesn't care.
You're right.
And that's another reason why it's better, I think, than Past in Flames and Yawgmoth's Will. Because Yawgmoth's Will only sees the cards that are in the graveyard when it's cast. Same with Past in Flames. So if you milled yourself after you Yawgmoth's Will, it won't, the new cards, it didn't know about it, right? Is that right?
Yeah. It's until I'm trying to play cards in your graveyard as though they're in your hand.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, I think so.
Past in Flames.
Well, the thing is about if a card would be put in your graveyard from anywhere this turn, you exile the card.
Well,
so they never come back. That's how Yawgmoth's Will gets around this.
Yeah, that is the really interesting thing I think about Underworld Breach, because an instant or sorcery can be cast over and over again. So imagine Dark Ritual.
Yeah, you just get infinite mana
as long as you have enough cards to exile in your graveyard.
Not infinite mana, sorry.
Mana Geyser is the real one. Can you imagine casting Mana Geyser like 5 times? You'll have 100 mana. Then you can do whatever you want. It's really interesting that they didn't say non-land permanents, because instant and sorcery, I think, is really what makes this thing kind of broken.
Yeah, each non-land card has escape. You can just play creatures again, enchantments again, artifacts.
So what you want to do is start playing some stuff that's going to fill your library up as you go, because you need those 3 cards to exile with the mana cost in order to sort of keep this engine running. So Wheel of Fortune is a really, really good one. Draws you 7 cards, puts whatever cards were in your hand. So you cast that 3 or 4 times. Now you've got 28 cards in your graveyard, and you can just keep going, right? Now that fuels all the other stuff that you want to do. So that's a really, really powerful combination. People are saying like Lion's Eye Diamond, because you can just cast it for 0 out of your graveyard and get 3 mana. And so that's like a ritual. I think Mana Geyser is probably a little bit better in that instance.
Yeah.
But
Underworld Breach is just saying, hello, bring red back to Storm decks too.
Yeah, really good with Storm. It's a really, really powerful card. And then it also has this interesting, at the beginning of your end step, sacrifice it, text on it, which, because these are usually sorceries that do this, we've never had to worry about it before, but I think you can even abuse that a little bit.
Yeah, if you get rid of end of turns, we've talked about Sundial of the Infinite before, it just ends the turn, and it exiles all spells and abilities from the stack, so Underworld Breach no longer will go away.
Yep,
and if
it'll be there on your next turn.
Yeah, and if someone gets rid of the Sundial, well, you can probably just recast it, because you have Underworld Breach.
Yeah, that's really hilarious.
Yeah.
So if you have like an extra turn spell, one of the ones that doesn't exile itself, Underworld Breach and Sundial, that's it. You're set. Like,
yeah, you just have to find ways to get cards into your library, and then hope that you can win off of them.
And
before you mill yourself out.
Yeah, you're going to be able to, because there's only 3 cards you're exiling each time. So you don't need infinite turns. You just need 7. You don't even need 7. You usually need 3 turns, and you're good. So this is a very powerful card and a lot of cool usages.
Yeah, play it with all the cycling lands that draw you a card.
Yeah, I just think it's great, even if it's just Yawgmoth's Will. If you don't do any of the broken stuff we just talked about, and you're just like, hey, I play this, I play 3 cards out of my graveyard.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Good job, Red. Thank you,
job.
Watsy. Yeah, that's cool. I'm actually going to put this in a bunch of decks now.
God, I'm bad again.
Oh, my goodness. That's kind of cool, though.
All right, let's move on to black. The first card in black is Cling to Dust. It's 1 black mana for an instant. Exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, you gain 3 life. Otherwise, you draw a card.
Oh. So it's kind of a cantrip that exiles a card from a graveyard at instant speed. So you can get rid of, again, someone target something with something, reanimate, boom, cling to dust.
Yep, they're like, oh, I'm going to Snapcaster Mage my extra turn spell. No.
And you draw a card for a Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Oh no, you're going to do the extra turn spell, not the Snapcaster.
Right. Well, yeah, the Snapcaster targets the spell, and then boom, you exile the card.
You exile the spell,
and it's not a spell. Yeah, it's not a creature, so you draw a card.
Oh,
so.
it's not a creature. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also has escape for 3 and a black, so you can exile 5 other cards from your graveyard and get this effect. Now, that's expensive, but in the moments where you really need to do it, like they're getting their extra, like I Snapcaster targeting time stretch.
Yeah.
You need to stop that from happening, and you're willing to pay 4 mana and 5 cards from your graveyard. There's also good in decks that are just going to mill themselves, so you just keep some graveyard hate in your graveyard.
Yeah, a lot of the best graveyard hate is
layaway.
one-time use, so this is great.
Yeah, so I think this is actually playable and pretty good because worst case scenario, you just cycle it away for 1 mana, so it just can never be that bad.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
All right, next up we have Gravebreaker Lamia. 4 in the black for a really cool looking snake Lamia enchantment creature. It's a 4/4. Has lifelink. When Gravebreaker Lamia enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. And the text, spells you cast from your graveyard cost 1 less to cast.
Really good with Underworld Breach.
Yes, very good with Underworld Breach. And it's actually really good with Kess Dissident Mage. Because it says spells you cast from your graveyard cost 1 less to cast. And this sort of entombs a card into your graveyard. And Kess says during each of your turns you may cast an instant or sorcery from your graveyard. So it's good. I mean, the mana reduction, if it's just 1, makes a big difference when you're casting 3 or 4 spells. And you're doing this constantly out of your graveyard. Like Muldrotha loves this, obviously. Carador loves this. Chainer, Nightmare Adept, things that are tossing stuff into the graveyard and want to recast it. And again, it says spells you cast, so it's not creatures, it's not instants or sorceries, it's every spell.
Yawgmoth's Will, Past in Flames, just like Underworld Breach. Flashback, the escape mechanic. Also, I like the fact that Entomb on and enter the battlefield effect, so there's ways to sort of reanimate, basically get that Entomb effect a couple of times, blink it or whatever. So this is a very powerful card. It's going to do some cool stuff. I mean, it's a tutor too, so yeah. Because the card you put into your graveyard could be Past in Flames, which combos with Lamia and allows you to, so pretty cool. The next one is Hateful Eidolon, 1 black for a 1/2, Spirit with lifelink. It says, whenever an enchanted creature dies, draw a card for each aura you controlled that was attached to it. Very interesting text. We're seeing colors care about enchantments that really haven't cared about enchantments before. I like this with like Rancor type effects. So Rancor is an enchantment that when it enters the battlefield enters the graveyard from the battlefield, it goes back to your hand. So that's a way to sort of pay 1 green and draw cards if you're sacking things or killing things or whatever, because that enchantment's going to go back to your hand.
Yeah, so we saw how good paying 1 green to draw a card was with your Muldrotha deck, your Ball deck. Yeah,
it's just a very good rate. 1 mana to draw a card is just above rate for sure. There's a card called Minions Return from this set that's sort of similar. It's a black card, and it returns the creature when it dies. So it's enchanted. You enchant the creature. You sack it. You draw a card because of Hateful Eidolon. The creature comes back into play. I think there's a lot of things you can do. There's what do you got there? Fool's Demise?
Fool's Demise is a blue enchantment that when the enchanted creature dies, it goes back to the battlefield, and then you get the enchantment back in your hand. Gift of Immortality sort of has that same thing, right? The creature dies, is going to come back, and Gift of Immortality recurs back onto it. So with Hateful Eidolon now, you just need a sack outlet to just draw cards off that creature over and over again.
Yep.
This is very good in the Voltron deck with a bunch of auras, because now all of a sudden it's okay if that creature dies.
Josh Murphy, who is one of our editors here, was very excited because he has a Ramses Overdark deck, and it's 2 blue, black for a legendary human assassin 4/3, but it says you can tap it and destroy target enchanted creature. So he's already like playing enchantments onto other people's things, and then you'll draw cards because it's whenever an enchanted creature dies, you don't have to control it.
I didn't realize that.
You have to control the enchantment on it, but the aura on it, but not the creature that dies. So if you pacified something and it died, something like that.
Oh, yeah. This would be really good in the cube.
Yeah.
Right?
To have like
cubes play pacifisms and all that stuff.
And an aura like build around theme,
And then they can play Storm Herald. The weirdest red card I've ever seen in my life.
Rakdos enchantment matters. Hey. Anything's possible.
Anything's possible if you dream it. If you build it, it will come. All right. Nightmare Shepherd, 2 black, 4/4 for an enchantment creature demon with flying. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's 1/1 and it's a nightmare in addition to its other types. So this basically is kind of similar to what happens when you have a Mimic Vant creature dies. You can choose to exile instead. And now you're actually creating a copy of it.
But it's a 1/1 copy.
But you get the enter the battlefield effects, so you kind of get a lot of cool stuff from it.
You get its text box. Really good, I'd say, with like Taste of Karloff, so you get double death triggers.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. There's, I don't know.
Aristocrats decks want
There's
things
just
to die.
you want enter the battlefield effects,
you want more ETBs, yeah.
There's not a lot of like specific interesting things to say, but I think
it's like pseudo protection for a deck that has a lot of smaller things that, like, because Aristocrats decks have like 5 versions of Zulaport Cutthroat and Blood Artist.
Even like Yarick or something, because everything's got an ETB, so when it dies, it's going to come back with its
do
ETB,
it twice.
So you don't really want to kill their Sword of Temptation or whatever.
Die again to something,
The next one is Woe Strider. It's 2 and a black for a 3/2 horror. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 0/1 white goat creature token. And that poor goat is not long for this world. It says, sacrifice another creature, scry one. So the same text as Viscera Seer. I almost said Viscera, but it's Viscera. Like Viscera. Get it right, Josh. We get yelled at every time.
Yeah, Viscera, we say it.
Viscera.
Viscera Seer is sack any creature, so it can sack itself, but Woe Strider comes in with a creature to sack, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, but it says sacrifice another creature. You're right.
Right, yeah.
Scry one. You can escape it for 3 black and exile 4 other cards from your graveyard. So it has its own recursion. And also says when Woe Strider escapes, it comes in with 2+1/+1 counters on it.
I think this card is absolutely pushed beyond belief.
Yeah.
There's so much text going on here.
It makes a token, cares about sacrifice stuff, it recurs itself, it gets bigger.
And it creates another token when it comes in and keeps doing this thing. So
can you imagine playing limited against this thing?
No, I don't want to play. There's so many cards in this set that I was like, they're bad for EDH, but man, they're really good in limited.
This is actually good for EDH. I mean, Viscera Seer is 1 mana, which is one of the reasons it's so good. So
it's cheap.
This is not on that level, but Aristocrat style decks want free sack outlets, and this is another one that recurs itself out of the graveyard. So if you milled yourself or it died or dumped it in there and you really need a sack outlet later, you can get it back out and sort of get the train rolling again. So I do like it.
Yeah, I think people undervalue the fact that you can rebuy something. Even if it costs a lot more mana, it's still the option to do so, which is better than not having the option at all. And in this case, the card itself isn't like extremely overpriced to begin with, so...
I mean, these cards allow you, we've all been in games where things didn't go well, and now I'm just kind of loafing around. I don't have a lot of cards in my hand. I don't have a lot going on, and this gives you stuff to do to get that train rolling again.
I like the goat in the background of this art. It's just really small and chilling and just sort of being like, I don't think I should be here, but I'm here now.
Yeah, I feel bad. I don't like the goat. I feel bad for the goat.
Well, the goat's just kind of like got caught in a really bad position. He's like, bad idea. I got to get out of here.
This is bad.
Oh, boy. All right. We saved white for last because we might bag on it. And, the longer these episodes go, the saltier we become. So,
yeah, let's find out. Did they help? Did they throw white some bones here? White, I think, needs to be getting cards that are on the power level with the greens and the blues because it needs to start to come back.
And in this set's case, the reds, too, randomly.
Because every set that comes out where white is just less powerful than the other big colors, the gap is widening.
Yeah.
The gap is widening. And the gap...
Look at Nyx Bloom Ancient! The gap is so much bigger compared to the... Like, what?
Okay, so I think white does have some good cards. Let's see how it stacks up, though.
All right, the first one is an Archon. It's Archon of Sun's Grace. 2 white for a 3/4 flying lifelink. Now, if you see this in limited, you just concede, I think.
It's over.
It says, Pegasus creatures you control have lifelink and Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. So,
it enters the battlefield, too. It's not cast like Sigil of the Empty Throne, which the cast thing can be a little annoying.
Right. So this Constellation cares about you make 2/2s that have lifelink, and this also is a 3/4 lifelink for 4 mana. Yeah, it's a very good creature. It's, again, nowhere near the power level of what Dryad of Elysian Grove or Nyx Bloom Ancient or Underworld Breach can do, but it's actually pretty fun because I know a lot of people like Pegasi.
Yeah. I'm not sure what that is.
Stormherd is the classic card for 10 mana. You put X 1/1 white Pegasus creature token with flying into play where extra life, so you're pretty much winning off of this already, but hey, if you've been getting lifelink from other Pegasi,
you might get 60 instead of 40.
Yeah, a bunch. And then there's like Sacred Mesa and Pegasus Refuge are both just sort of like make more Pegasi.
The infinite combo that jumps to mind with this one is Enchanted Evening, because it makes everything an enchantment, so that when the Pegasus comes into the battlefield, the token, it's an enchantment. So it makes another Pegasus, which is an enchantment. So it makes another Pegasus, which is an enchantment. Here's the thing, though, is that does the game just end in a draw there? Because you can never stop it. You have to sacrifice the Enchanted Evening or the Archon at some point somehow.
Wait, that's hilarious.
Right?
Maybe you just have to have a sack outlet so that your original Archon goes away.
Yeah, you're like, okay, I have 929 Pegasuses. I'm going to go ahead and sack my Archon.
Such a weird number. Why 929?
I don't know. That's the number that came to mind.
Yeah, that's pretty fun.
Oddly specific.
Yeah, oddly specific. Enchantress decks, obviously you're going to play this if you can.
Yep.
A Johnny's Chosen is pretty fun. It's the same. It's Constellation, but you're creating a 2/2 white cat creature token. So that's fun.
Does a similar thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alila cares about...
Oh, Alila's really good, actually, because it cares about flyers.
Yeah, and you're going to make a bunch.
Yep, and it makes its own fairy tokens, and like you're getting tokeny with it. Daxos the Returned.
Yep, pay 1 white and a black, and you create a white and black spirit enchantment creature token.
Which carries a Pegasus.
Yeah, fun stuff. Okay, all right. Good job, Pegasus. Archon. The card itself is not Pegasus, notably.
It makes Pegasus.
It's bringing them along. Yeah, it's the Archon.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's weird.
It's the person on the thing, I think. That's what the Archon is.
All right.
Who knows?
Okay. It's the, what's his name from Clash of the Titans? He rides the Pegasus, right?
Zeus?
No, Zeus is the god.
Well, he could ride the Pegasus.
We probably could, but in Clash of the Titans...
There's a character that doesn't?
Yeah, it's the main guy.
It's been so long since I've seen that movie.
Okay, well...
Banishing Light's getting a reprint in this set, and there's an actual difference here between Banishing Light... Perseus? He's a...
No, that's Percy Jackson and the whatever. That's Perseus. He's the... Whatever. Okay, we're going to go. We're not going to... It's fine. We'll look it up later.
We wanted to mention Banishing Light because there's a difference between this and Oblivion Ring. Banishing Light says when Banishing Light enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Banishing Light leaves the battlefield. So the difference is if you Banishing Light a commander and the enchantment of Banishing Light is destroyed, your commander can actually return to the battlefield under this text.
Even if you put it in the command zone.
Yeah, because all of this text is a single linked trigger. It's one sentence. It's when it enters the battlefield, it gets exiled until this leaves the battlefield. Something like O-Ring has 2 triggers.
Right, so it exiles the thing, and then the second trigger is when it leaves, it brings it back. That's why with O-Ring, you can actually remove or blink O-Ring in response to its first trigger, so that the creature will just get exiled forever.
Yeah.
So, pretty interesting. Look up the rules on it. Banishing Light can be better. Banishing Light, you sometimes play on your own stuff.
Yeah, because you'll get it back.
Yeah, sort of board wipe protection type deal, or a way to sort of pseudo blink your things. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Anyway, that's what we wanted to talk about.
Okay, the next one is Eidolon of Obstruction. 1 and a white for a 2/1 spirit enchantment creature. Has first strike, but it says loyalty abilities of planeswalkers your opponents control cost 1 more generic mana to activate. So it now costs 1 mana to activate any of your planeswalkers.
If you're an opponent. Yeah. This is
your
first time we've ever seen something like this, which I guess is
good.
Yeah, good. I was going to say slightly applaudable. Like I'm not going nuts over here.
Slightly applaudable.
But it's new for white, and it's something that we've never seen before.
And also, like, as planeswalkers, there's more and more years go by, and more of them are made. Like, they need to be making more and more answers and ways to interact with them. And I think having a few more cards like this is good because, yeah, it's just nice to have tools in the toolbox for planeswalkers.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You're now taxing planeswalker activations.
Yeah.
Now, it's nothing compared to the other crazy cards we've talked about, but it is something.
It's not Nyx Bloom Ancient.
You know, when you have this scarcity mentality about white and they give you a crumb, you're like, it's a cake.
Yeah, exactly. But then when you really pull back and look at it, you're like, that was still like half of a piece of a cake.
Yeah, and it's
they got like 5 cakes over there.
The frosting is like moldy. It's like the rough frosting when it freezes up. Okay.
Good analogy, everybody.
Yeah, we did it. Yep. Elspeth Conquers Death is the next one. 3 white. Unfortunately, this card is not called White Conquers Its Problems. Chapter 1. It's a saga. Exile target permanent and opponent controls with converted mana cost 3 or greater. That's pretty neat, actually. Permanent, so it could be not a land, but permanent. Chapter 2. Non-creature spells your opponent's cast cost 2 more to cast until your next turn. And number 3, chapter 3, return target creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter or a loyalty counter on it. So this is Elspeth's story. She gets exiled, and then something, it's hard to cast spells, and then boom, the planeswalker comes back to the battlefield with an extra loyalty on it.
Yeah, bigger and badder than before.
Yeah, the art is amazing. Shout out to Ryan Yee on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is cool.
I think all of those effects are pretty strong, and there's a decent amount of value tied to it. Also, if you can do any of the stuff we talked about before, power conduit, keep exiling stuff, keep making it hard for your opponents to cast spells. You know, even like it hits 3 in response to the sacrificing of trigger or whatever, you remove it real quick. No, that won't work. You have to remove then proliferate, remove then add.
Yeah.
It's hard to get the third one or the final one multiple times. There's probably some ways to do it. But anyway, exiling things over and over is a good way to like get good value. Because imagine if you're able to just remove 1 counter every turn and you're just exiling something every turn.
Yeah, and it's permanent. So that's something I don't think White has really had. They just don't get straight permanent removal.
Not that often. It's usually non-land permanent. Yeah.
It's tied to at least CMC 3 or more. So that is something. But lands will never have a CMC of 5 or 3.
This next one would be good with the Saga. It's Flicker of Fate. It's 1 and a white for an instant. It says exile target creature or enchantment, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So this is an immediate flicker. It doesn't come back on the end step. And Jimmy, you were saying that we've never had an instant speed on an instant card
for
flicker enchantments before. Yeah.
We have it for activated abilities, like with Flicker Form, that you could do it on a creature with auras and stuff. Venser can do it to permanence, but that returns at the beginning of the next end step. Flicker Wisp does it, but again, that's another end step thing. Brago is more conditional, and Amanatu is sorcery speed. But this is instant speed for enchantments, so it's notable. I'm always interested in flicker effects, especially ones that bring the creature immediately back, because sometimes that lets you abuse the thing a lot more efficiently and quickly.
This is actually really good for enchantments too, because we rarely see cards that are like destroy all enchantments. It does happen, but it's not all the time. So a lot of times they're singularly trying to remove your enchantment, and you can use this as a protection spell there too.
Yeah.
Even if it's not like I need to flicker it for some kind of ETB value, just
and
save
it does it on creatures too. So this is like, I think, one of those cards that's like going to be a really fun budget card for a lot of decks, but also in certain cases will just be very powerful.
All right, the last one is the only reprint we're going to talk about. There have been a number, but we're not going to mention them all. However, this one is very, very good because it was getting to be about $30 for this card.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So it's cool that they're reprinting it in a standard set, and it's not even mythic. It's at rare. So this is going to go down quite a lot. It's Idyllic Tutor, 2 and a white for sorcery. Search your library for an enchantment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. One of the better white cards in Commander. And
into your hand tutor, very importantly.
And I would say cardkingdom.com/commandzone. Get these cards when they're at their lowest. Get Idyllic Tutor, get a few of them, because it's going to go back up over time. It's just a card that goes in a lot of white decks, and there's a reason that its price tag was so high before this.
Yeah, so that's what we can be happy about for white, is that they reprinted the card that we
That's got. Actually, is that the best thing that white got, was that reprint?
Arguably.
I think it is.
Yeah, unless you think Heliod's that much better.
Oh, Heliod's pretty good. We'll talk about that later, but it's close at the very least.
So, what do we think about white?
Oh, yeah. So, all right. Yeah, let's reflect here. Did white get enough help? Is it at least moving in the right direction, or do we still have this feeling that, we've had the last few sets where it's just every set falling behind?
This has more baby steps than other sets have had, at least with the taxation on Planeswalker abilities is pretty new. And the Sagas, because they're so relatively rare as a card type, it's cool to see which ones that white gets.
It's still not even close to the color that got the most powerful effects.
Right.
Green seems to get that most of the time, and green as a color is just, if this were a race, at the fair when you have to shoot the water in a thing and the horse goes, their horse is like way ahead of everybody else's horse.
White's gun isn't working. It's pointed the other direction.
Yeah, it's like a 3-year-old shooting his mom. And then no, honey, hit the thing, and
then the person standing behind there is like, well, that gun actually doesn't do that.
Yeah.
What do you mean it doesn't do that? It's like that gun. It's just that we didn't design it to be as good as the other ones.
And black and blue are like still in it, whereas if like green suddenly the water ran out, they might catch up. Red's still pretty far behind, but at least they're making a good show of it. And
occasionally they'll do something that you're just like, wait, what?
Yeah. And it's like the red horse is like going at a speed, and then it speeds up and then it slows down again, but it's like still, and white is just like the horse isn't even moving sometimes. And I think that's the problem, is like here we are, and white's like not horrible in this set, but it's not number one. And when's the last time that white was the best color for Commander in a set?
I don't think I remember a single set review we've ever done that white's been the best.
I mean,
honestly, the best white card there have been two amazing white cards that have been printed in the last 5 years.
Smothering Tithe.
And
Fairy's Protection.
Fairy's Protection, yeah.
Which wasn't even in a regular set. It was a Commander set.
Yeah, which you would think would have all the powerful white cards in them because obviously they have standards to worry about for standard sets. But even Modern Horizons didn't really have anything for white. And
my worry is that this trend's continued so far for 5+ years. And if it keeps going, we're getting close, because we didn't used to complain about white so much. Because the gap has been widening, now it's starting to be noticeable. We're almost we're moving towards a 4-color format where white is just so bad and it's getting worse and it's falling behind. I really hope they look at white and be like, hey, for a couple of sets, let's try and make the Commander cards for white the best cards in the set compared to everybody else. Green doesn't need awesome Commander cards as much as white does, and yet green gets awesome Commander cards every single set.
Yeah, or blue just gets some great. Look at there's a card in here that's making the competitive group of players, the most particular players in the world, sweat.
Yep. But has white has never done that. So yeah, no. I think if every set was like this, we'd be in a better spot because white is doing some decent stuff.
Yeah,
but we need more than this to catch white up. White's so far behind now. We need to be playing catch up.
Yeah, and again, we are not designers. We don't know exactly what's happening behind the scenes. They design these sets 2 years in advance, so we'll see what happens. Hopefully, we get to see some stuff. I'm particularly looking forward to Commander Legends next year. I'm got my fingers crossed for that one.
I do want to say, you made a good point. Don't forget that Heliod, who we talked about last episode, is a very strong mono-white commander. I don't know if it's strong in the good way for casual players and that it's combo-y, but still, it's a good one. And then Heliod's Intervention, which we didn't discuss during the white cards, is probably, it might be the best of the interventions. So white did well in this set, but again, I think they're well behind green for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Enough about that. Let's move on to the multicolored cards. We're almost done here, everybody.
Oh, so close. All right, multicolored, then artifacts, then lands, and then we talk about powerful cards.
Okay, we got a bit left. All
right, okay. Multicolored. It's okay because this one we can spend about 2 seconds on. It's Allure of the Unknown. 3, a black and a red for a sorcery. Reveal the top 6 cards of your library. An opponent exiles a non-land card from among them. Then you may put the rest into your hand. Then that opponent may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So
you get 5 cards for how much mana? 6 mana?
Yeah, no thank
5 mana.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But your opponent could take... Your deck has to be built around not having a nuts card in your deck because your opponent will just take it.
Well...
If you're aristocrats, they're all 2 mana, 1 mana
It's synergy
cards,
based, or you're a Merfolk
cool.
tribal. One Merfolk doesn't do that much for them. I also think it's pretty political. In a lot of games, there's an archenemy.
Right.
And so you're hey... You can have the best card out of here. I don't care because I'm going to get 5 cards to hand, and you're going to use that card against them, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you're the archenemy at that moment, it's a pretty bad draw for you. You probably don't want to use it, but a lot of times you're
pure black-red, there's a good chance you're not the archenemy.
Right. That's a good point. It's true. It's very true. So I actually think the card might be a little better because the circumstance is you can choose an opponent who you don't mind getting something awesome and make the agreement. Hey, I'm going to pick you. Whatever it is, you never use it against me. Deal?
Deal. Yeah.
And that's not so bad.
They take a board wipe. They're I'm so sorry. Yeah. Seb McKinnon did draw the art though, so that's pretty cool.
The art. Seb is just always awesome.
Thanks, Seb.
All right. The next one is Bronzehide Lion. It's the Fleece Mane Lion of the set. Bronzehide Lion is green, white, 2 mana for a 3/3 cat. So a definite callback to Fleece Mane. Even more so because it says pay a green and white and Bronzehide Lion gains indestructible until end of turn. Mm-hmm. And then when Bronzehide Lion dies, return it to the battlefield. It's an aura enchantment with enchant creature you control and pay green white, enchanted creature gains indestructible until end of turn and loses all other abilities.
Yeah, so I think the lore is coming back as the pelt. There was someone that, I think Hercules, one of the things he had to kill a lion, but it was unkillable, so he just strangled it to death or something, and then he wore his pelt around him.
So this is you make a coat out of the lion and it gives you protection. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, if you're able to flicker the enchantment, then it comes back as a creature again.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. This next one actually is one of the more talked about cards as well. It's got the combo potential. Of course, it's green-blue. It's Enigmatic Incarnation. 2, a green and a blue for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another enchantment. If you do, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrificed enchantment's converted mana cost. Put that card on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. It is Enchantment Pod.
Yeah, because It's weird, though, because
You're sacrificing
first time I read it, I thought you sacrificed an enchantment to go get another enchantment, but you don't.
No, you find a creature.
Yeah, so you sort of Vanifar, Birthing Pod, an enchantment into a creature. It's interesting because it makes it harder to loop.
Yeah.
It's still possible to get in some interesting loops, but because...
Or you find enchantment creatures.
Exactly,
right? Yeah.
enchantment creatures. It just makes your options less, but still, it's just like upgrading your enchantment to a +1 CMC creature of some kind, and it's tutoring onto the battlefield. That's always going to be very, very powerful. And then there's combo stuff.
Yeah, people are excited for standard because you start with the green ley line and a turn 1 Gilded Goose. Turn 2, you play this thing, I guess. And then turn 3, you go get a 5-mana crazy thing because you sacrifice the whatever.
Maybe.
Or something like, I don't play standard, but
something like that.
Something like that.
There's some way that works. Maybe turn 3.
Yeah, this is interesting. There's cards like Induced Amnesia, which is a card that we've thought about a lot. It's a cool card. It's 2 in the blue for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, target player exiles all cards from their hand face down, then draws that many cards. And when Induced Amnesia is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return the exiled cards to their owner's hand. So you can draw basically like 2 hands with this.
That's really good. And they've been able to do cards like that because it's hard to sacrifice your own enchantments generally.
Yes, yeah. Until now. But there are a few cards in the history of Magic that do it. Hatching Plans, 1 in the blue. When it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you draw 3 cards. Rancor, again, is very, very good because you can just keep getting it back and back. And with Rancor, you can actually find Time Stream Navigator, which is 1 in the blue, a human pirate wizard that you can pay 2 blue and tap it. You put it on the bottom of its owner's library. Take an extra turn after this one, and you can only activate it if you have the Say's Blessing. But the whole point is it protects itself by hiding it in your graveyard.
And then you just keep getting it back out with a name.
Yeah, because you just play Rancor on your next turn because it comes back to your hand because you sacrifice it with any Incarnation, get Time Stream Navigator, and take more turns.
All right.
So yeah, Muldrotha likes this as well, obviously. And there's a bunch of cards like Brilliant Halo, Angelic Destiny, Aspect of Mongoose. They all come back to your hand after they get sacked.
Yeah, that Rancor text is on a lot of enchantments.
Yeah.
So you're sacking something that you're just going to get right back.
Yep.
Pretty cool. All right, let's go to artifacts.
We're close.
Yeah, we're closing in. Let's go to artifacts now. The first artifact we're going to talk about is Altar of the Pantheon. It's 3 mana total for an artifact. Your devotion to each color and each combination of colors is increased by 1. And then you can tap it and add 1 mana of any color. If you control a god, a demigod, or a legendary enchantment, you also gain 1 life. So it increases your devotion from a colorless card, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And then it's a mana rock. Who cares about the demigod god thing and gaining 1 life? That's not a big deal. I guess some life gain decks might care about that.
I mean, if you like God Tribal,
Heliod
Morophon
cares,
or
right?
something.
Yeah. Heliod gets a 1/1 counter and does some stuff or whatever. But the adding to your devotion, I don't know. Is that worth playing a 3 mana rock for?
I don't think so, because wouldn't you just rather play a better card that had the pip on it?
Or just play Arcane Signet or a regular Signet or Felwar Stone, or it just costs 2, right? Mind
This
Stone.
could gain you a lot of life. If you're a Changeling deck, this could be funny.
It could gain you like 5 life.
Yeah.
All right, the next one is...
Nyx Lotus, 4 mana for a legendary artifact. It has a Lotus in it. Maybe it's good. Nyx Lotus enters the battlefield tapped. That's getting worse. Tap it, choose a color, add an amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion of that color.
Ooh.
So this is doing what the original Nykthos, Shrine to Nykthos.
So Shrine to Nyx.
Nyx, there it is. Yeah, not Nykthos, Shrine to Nykthos, Shrine to Nykthos. But it doesn't need to pay 2 mana to tap to use the land. However, this does enter the battlefield tapped.
And it doesn't tap for mana on its own. So Nykthos will still tap for a colorless even if you don't do the devotion thing. Whereas Nyx Lotus doesn't tap for any mana if you don't have devotion to anything out there. I think this card is good. People are going kind of nuts over it. I think it's a little bit overrated because one of the good things about having a lot of mana is being able to recover after board wipes and things. And Nyx Lotus has trouble doing that. Although if the first thing you cast has 2 pips, it'll tap for 2. That's fine. But sometimes this thing will just tap for 8 or 9, which is kind of nuts. So that might balance it out. I mean...
In monocolor decks, maybe, but it comes into play tapped. It's 4 mana. It's a heavy investment.
Mono white? Mono white needs ramp, and this is a decent ramp. Like
maybe this is just the best mono red, mono white ramp card for because like red loves having 1 red res the casting cost.
Yeah.
So
how often is this better than Thran Dynamo, which just taps for 3 colorless?
Probably.
And it doesn't come in tapped. It's better sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, Thran Dynamo I do find is such an awkward mana rock because you play it and you want to do other stuff with it, but you're like maybe a couple mana short.
So here we are, and we're talking about comparing it to something that is not even that great.
Yeah.
And we're not even sure if it's better than that thing. So how good is Nyx Lotus?
I think it's just okay.
Yeah.
And also, like, is it better in mono green than is it mono white? It's like probably. Green
but
has
green's just
something-
going to play explosive vegetation and Sky Shroud Claim instead and just get lands out that you can't mess with.
That's how they're doing it. They're helping other colors by making cards that are so bad in the colors that would otherwise be good in.
All right, this next one's pretty good. I like it quite a bit. It's called Shadow Spear. It's that cool spear that Elspeth is holding. It's got a bunch of shadows like shooting out of it. It's like smoke effects.
It's a shadow spear.
Yeah. It's 1 mana for an equipment, legendary artifact. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample and lifelink. That's okay. But you can pay 1 and permanents your opponent's control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn.
It's the God Killer. It's thematic with what Elspeth is doing, but it's also really good for Commander. Imagine this was an enchantment, you might still play it.
Yeah, it's just because what is the analogs like Glaring Spotlight and that kind of stuff, which are more expensive, more narrow. This gets rid of indestructible. 2, it's cheap. 1 mana to activate. I'm not even talking about the equipment part, and that's kind of what makes it great. The fact that if I don't care about hexproof or indestructible, I can still suit something up and give it trample and lifelink.
Yeah, which locks it on Warhammer.
Yeah, that's worth it. I mean, it doesn't pump the creature quite as much, but it's still and very cheap, very efficient. 1 mana to play, 1 to activate that ability, 2 to equip. So I think this might go in quite a few decks just to deal with problematic hexproofy stuff, Narset, and those kind of things.
Yeah, finally, White gets a tool to deal with those. I'm telling you, that might be how they're doing it. Straight up, just put it in an artifact. All right, Soul Guide Lantern, 1 mana for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, exile target card from a graveyard, and you can tap it to sacrifice the Soul Guide Lantern to exile each opponent's graveyard. So it's not like Relic Progenitus, where it's just all graveyards. And you also pay 1 and tap it to sacrifice it to draw a card.
So 1 mana, you tap it, sacrifice it, exile each opponent's graveyard, so not your own. 1 mana, tap it, sacrifice it, draw a card. And when it ETBs, you exile 1 card. So what's Relic of Progenitus do?
Relic of Progenitus is very similar, but also very different. It's 1 mana, and you can tap it to make a player exile a card from their graveyard.
But they choose.
Okay. And then if you pay 1, you don't need to tap it. You exile the Relic of Progenitus, and you exile all cards from graveyards, but you draw a card. So you do cycle with the Relic while doing the exile ability.
Whereas the Soul Guide Lantern, you have to choose. Either I'm exiling all my opponent's graveyards or I'm sacking it to draw a card, but you can't get both effects.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this is better than Relic because you don't want your own graveyard going away a lot of the time.
Most of the time, yeah.
If you don't care about your own graveyard, then Relic is probably better. But I like that this comes in and gets rid of something immediately.
And really, the instance where you want the card draw from it is when nobody's graveyard recursion or anything like that, and so you don't care. You're like, well, I don't need to exile graveyards because no one's playing around in there, so I'll just cycle this, and so that's fine. And the times when you're like, people are playing around their graveyards, you're like, I'm totally willing to do that at the cost of a card, so you don't care that it doesn't cycle. So yeah, I kind of agree that maybe it is better than Relic of Progenitus. It's interesting. Maybe you play both if you play in a graveyard heavy meta, but this is definitely a playable card in EDH and something that can fill a slot in your deck because Relic sees a lot of play.
Yes.
All right. We're almost there. We're to the lands. Really quickly, for those on the YouTube, if you haven't seen already, Theros Beyond Death has some really cool Constellation lands. We're going to put them on screen now. They're full art. They look sweet.
Yeah. They're going to look sweet in foil. I can't wait.
Yeah, I was going to say, do we know yet whether they're going to be appearing in booster boxes at the same rate as foil lands in the regular sets, which is like 1 per box, or are they going to do that thing like for Unstable where it's like 1 every 3 boxes? Do we know?
Who knows? I'm hoping 1 a box.
I hope so.
So that they're, easily accessible for those of you that want to pimp out your basics in your deck.
Even then, they're still not easily accessible.
Yeah.
But we're just 1 every 3 boxes. It's like, that's why those Unstable lands are like $100 each or something stupid.
I'm going to put the estimate of the price of these at anywhere between 5 and 10, depending on how rare they are. Yeah, for the foil of these lands, which I think is not bad.
Well, the white ones will be 5 and the blue ones will be 10. That's true. That's how that works.
That's how white gets ahead. It's more affordable.
All right. There's only 1 land in the set besides those basics that we want to talk about. It's Labyrinth of Scophos. It's a land. You can tap it for colorless mana, diamond mana, or you can pay 4 and tap it and remove target attacking or blocking creature from combat. So Maze of Ith something.
Yeah, Maze of Ith does prevent combat damage.
Right.
So this kind of can act as reconnaissance as well because you can remove it from combat at the end, but it doesn't untap. So it's interesting. It is definitely just basically what Maze of Ith is doing, though. But
yeah, you're right. Maze of Ith is better in a lot of ways. It doesn't cost mana.
Yeah.
But Maze doesn't tap for mana on its own either.
Right.
This costs 4, which is pretty steep, but at the same time, it does protect you from a creature attacking you. And yeah, if they have one good block and you have 4 creatures, you can swing in with everything and remove the one that got blocked from combat. So you can do stuff like that. Usually just having this out in the mana available will mean people won't attack you because they're just going to have no effect. They'd just rather attack somebody else. So yeah, pretty powerful. Okay, that's all the cards from Theros Beyond Death that we're going to talk about today. Now we have 2. We always do this little award ceremony.
It's like the Acrone War. David, the cards have been training.
They're playing the trumpets at the award ceremony. Okay, so most powerful new card. So let's talk about our nominations. We've been pulling them aside here. We've got Thassa's Oracle, the soon-to-be CEDH powerhouse.
Yep, draw basically scry when it enters the battlefield, you create a devotion, and you could win the game depending on how many cards are in your library when you do it. There's Dryad of the Elysian Grove, which allows you to play an additional land in green, and then it also prismatic omens every single land to turn them into every basic land type.
There's Nyxbloom Ancient, our preview card. It's a 5/5 that makes all of your permanents tap for triple the amount of mana that they would have previously.
And then finally, Underworld Breach, the underdog coming in from the Underworld in the color of red, which gives each non-land card in your graveyard escape. And the escape cost is their mana cost, and then exiling 3 other cards from your graveyard, and you have to sacrifice it at the end step, but probably won't matter at that point.
All right. You want to do the thing where we both decide and say it at once?
Yeah.
I got mine.
3,
2, 1.
Thassa's Oracle.
Ancient. I think yours is good because it's probably the most powerful. Thassa's Oracle. Yeah, I just think Nyxbloom Ancient goes in more decks and will... Because you can at least consider Nyxbloom Ancient in every single deck that has green.
True. And I would say the same goes for Dryad of the Elysian Grove.
Yeah.
The reason that Underworld Breach doesn't make it is because it seems very specific to kinds of strategies, and you need a little bit of step to really make it go off.
I think it's broadly good, though, in that Yawgmoth's Will can almost go in any black deck. This deck could go in most red decks, and we'll do some awesome stuff. Well, let's go to the next category here, which is our favorite overall new card. So not what we think is the best, and who knows what best means, most powerful, whatever. Personal favorite, though, you're most excited about. You ready?
It's got to be 3, 2, 1.
Underworld Breach.
It's red. It's doing things that I've never seen before in terms of red.
Yeah, it's really cool. Opens up a lot of possibilities that red didn't have before. So I'm very excited to see what people pull off with Underworld Breach and that escape mechanic. Pretty cool card. And it doesn't seem like insanely broken. You can do stuff, but it's not like immediately go infinite with these 50 different cards like Nyxbloom Ancient kind of is.
Yeah, I think for Underworld Breach, people will be like, cool, I can think of some combos that'll work with it, and there'll be the people that are going to be like, I can bust this card really easily, and then for everyone else, it could just be like, this is like medium to high value always, which is cool. That's great.
Very, very cool. All right, to the listeners, what is your favorite new card from Theros Beyond Death? Are there any cards that you think will make a splash in Commander that we didn't talk about on this episode of the show? Or what about any cool interactions maybe that we missed with the cards we did talk about?
Leave a comment below.
Yep. Tweet at us, message us on Discord, email, anything at all. We love hearing from everybody. And when we hear cool things, a lot of times we do want to share them on the show. So you're helping us out when you do that stuff too.
Absolutely. All right. And of course, if you want to buy any of these cards, because there are plenty and you know you want to start brewing with some of them, head on over to cardkingdom.com/commandzone, our affiliate link, our wonderful, wonderful sponsors. We've been with them for so long now, and they have literally never let us down. They're such a great company. I love them to death. And please, 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 you can support them as well as this show by using the affiliate link, cardkingdom.com/commandzone.
And you're also supporting all of our content by supporting our other sponsor, which is UltraPro. A lot of really cool artwork and themes for this set. I love Greek mythology myself. So yeah, you want to get the constellation art for the gods on playmats, on deck boxes, on sleeves, on stuff like that. UltraPro is the one that has those licenses and makes all those products. And their stuff really is the best in the business. If you want to protect your cards, we put all our cards here. Like, here's our Nyxbloom Ancient. It's in an Eclipse sleeve. There you go. Eclipse sleeves. When we want to protect our cards, we put them into UltraPro sleeves because we know that they are really going to stay in pristine condition. So can't recommend them highly enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, now it's time for the end step where we talk about something cool outside the world of Magic.
I've read about this. I know the story, but I haven't watched it yet. No.
Okay, so there's a Netflix series, and it's called Don't F with Cats. Yep. Except for it's F with a star, and adults, you know what that word is.
Kids do.
Kids, you know what that word is too. Yeah, that's true. Still not going to say it. Don't F with Cats. It is really interesting. Murph, one of our editors, turned me on to this. He was like, you got to watch this. This is right up your alley. So the story is, it's interesting. What happens is there's a person who anonymously posts like a snuff film on like YouTube or something of them, I'll keep it G, of them like sort of torturing animals, doing bad things to animals.
Very violent, very gratuitous.
Yeah. They don't show the video itself on the series, so you won't be subjected to actually having to watch it, but you will
know what it's about.
Yeah, know what it's about. But what happens is that people see it online, just normal civilian people, and they're like, we're going to find that person. And they like watch the video a million times every single frame, and they're like looking for things, and they look at the light socket and they go, oh, or the power outlet, and they're like, we know their person is in this part of the world because of that. And they build a blueprint.
Posters, what's in the background? Where are they in the room? What's
a 3D blueprint of where the table and the bed and everything is in the room, and they're breaking everything down, and they're trying to track down who this maniac is. But the story actually escalates because the person is even more crazy than you would think, and they start to get on its tail, and then law enforcement gets involved, and I won't spoil anything else. There's only like 3 episodes, but it's very, very compelling, and the whole time you're going, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap. Like, it's just like escalate. So it's just very well done, and I don't know. The series was super compelling. We were up till like 2 a.m. because we were like, we got to watch the last one.
Well, don't F with cats, because clearly cat lovers will go to the ends of the earth to find you. This is actually earlier days too, back when Facebook was relatively new. It was kind of like the first time you saw internet sleuthing, like mob justice almost online. And it has not always been a positive turnout from that. Reddit was infamous for incorrectly identifying the Boston bomber, for instance, and going after someone in an entirely different family.
But this one was a positive outcome. And they create a Facebook group. At one point, they realized that the person has actually infiltrated that group. So they have to create like a secondary group. Like, it's pretty nuts. So,
pretty crazy.
Don't F with cats on Netflix.
Yeah, you'll find it if you just look up cats. And we're not talking about the movie.
All right, our editing, graphics, and logistic team is Lady Danger, Craig Blanchett. They're probably the ones who are doing this episode.
Yes.
Manson Leung, who is our new person and is working editing the podcast behind the scenes as well. We've got Alfred Estaca, Sam Waldo, Jake Boss, and Josh Murphy.
And Ashlyn Rose.
Who does all of the awesome thumbnails. You know, we've been getting so many comments recently about how good our thumbnails are. That's because Ashlyn took over. When I was doing them, they weren't as good.
When I was doing them, they were god-awful.
When you were doing them, it was like episode 30.
Yeah, it was literally a black screen with the number of the thing and then a piece of art that somewhat corresponded with the episode.
Ashlyn's great. She'll be like, well, maybe we should title the episode this. Oh, well, that's way better. Let's do that. So
my favorite is still powering up your decks where you're Super Saiyan.
Yeah, so our team is really, really awesome. Big thanks to them. They work so hard behind the scenes. And big thanks to everybody out there who supports our Patreon, Card Kingdom UltraPro, and really helps us able to make all of our content to the quality level that you've come to expect.
Absolutely. And special thanks to Geoffrey Palmer for the living card animations that live behind us on set. And you can find them on Twitter at livingcardsmtg, and you can find his other animations that start and end our show at youtube.com/the Command Zone Podcast. This has been an hour and 40-minute plus set review of Theros Beyond Death. They always end up this long, but we do it because we love you guys.
Remember when we used to do the legendary creatures and the cards in the 99 in the same episode?
What a bad idea.
Yeah, I'm trying not to remember that, actually. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching.
And we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter at JFWong and at Josh Lee Kwai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.